How's it going? It's Marshall. Thanks for tuning in. Wanted to do a video showing real-time tuning of the Behringer D and what kind of process is involved in this. There is an official video on the Behringer YouTube channel. I'll put a link to that. Be sure you watch it. Also, be sure to read your manual. And if you decide to do this yourself, I'm not responsible if you screw up your synthesizer. This is the process that I went through for this. First of all, I just want to point out that when I did this, Oscillator 1, I did kind of tune it a little bit off. I ended up tuning it to an A sharp. I realized this later in the video, so just hold your comments on that, and I end up retuning it correctly. Also, a couple things I just want to point out that you're going to need. So you're going to need some screwdrivers. I ended up having to use a little tiny jeweler's type of screwdriver. It's a flathead, even though I've got the older style Model D. My small Phillips head screwdriver is too big, and I was actually able to use this. It's recommended that you use one that's insulated. I did not. That might be an issue. I don't know, but it seemed to be okay. Also, for tuning, what I did for this was I used the Roland app. I'm just going to take this off of here. So this app is free. It's in the Play Store. You can see as I'm talking, it's picking me up. And the way I was able to avoid that was by using an iRig 2. These are fairly inexpensive, but I mean, you could probably just buy a tuner for what I paid for this. I don't know, but this is what I had laying around. You can take this and plug it into your phone. And then I've got a 1/4-inch adapter to 3.5 millimeter cable. This is just a patch cable from my MS-20 Mini going into the main out here. So I hope that makes sense. So this process took me about maybe 20-30 minutes. It doesn't take a long time at all, assuming you tune it correctly. It took me a little bit longer because I had to retune Oscillator 1 since I tuned it wrong the first time. But then also, if you guys wait till the end or skip to the end if you want, I just wanted to show that there is still a little bit of a difference in sound in my demo video where I compared some patches between the Behringer D and the Mini Moog. This difference is when you start stacking the oscillators, and I noticed it kind of most with the square waveforms. So I do a little bit of a demonstration kind of showing that now that this has been properly tuned and calibrated, that there is still a difference. Now, this is still not a Mini Moog. It's a clone of a Mini Moog, and it's only $300. So first of all, I wouldn't expect this to sound exactly like my Mini Moog. It sounds very close, I think, and it has a lot of the character. But would I sell my Mini Moog and keep this? No way, Jose. But for anyone looking for the Mini Moog type sound, this is a great value, I think, and get you a lot of the way there for not a lot of money. So that's my 2 cents. Let me know if you guys have had issues with any tuning. For me, again, this came from the factory, out of tune. The process is not complicated. However, just be mindful, follow normal safety procedures. If you're uncomfortable with it in any way, have a professional do it for you guys. You don't want to risk damaging your new synthesizer. So anyway, without further ado, here's the tuning of a Behringer D. So a couple things here. First of all, if you perform this procedure, please note that I'm not responsible if you damage your synthesizer. I'm just going through the process that is outlined by Behringer. Behringer also has a video online about this. I suggest you definitely check that out as well. This is real world scenario. This is me trying to tune my personal unit. So if you do this at your own risk. And again, I'm not responsible if you mess up your synthesizer. It is recommended that you have a trained technician. All right, so what do we need here to make this work? First of all, we need to remove all 8 of the screws on the front panel. I've already done this, and you can see they're all over here. You can run an audio out through here, which I've done so that we can capture the audio from this session in the video. But then I have the main out mini jack going into an iRig 2, which is then plugged into my Android Galaxy S phone with the Roland tuning app. If we flip on the 440 Hertz, you can see we get an A. Nice solid A. This is a digital tone, so it's going to be always perfect. I did compare this to what the Mini Moog does, my Model D, and the Model D is a little bit off from this. So actually, in the future, when I need to tune my mini Moog, I'll probably use the digital tone on this. All right, well, since we're using the tuning app, we don't really need to worry about the 440 hertz, but if we wanted to actually tune the synth to this, so let's see how bad it is. So I'm going to play an A on the synthesizer in Ableton. And you can see we're a little flat on this. And what you would normally do is tune this up to where you get an A. All right. So now we have an A. But what if we go down an octave? Go down even another octave. You can see we've got some drift here. The other thing is, if we switch down one of these other oscillators, let's just play an A. So that one's out. And let's see how bad the other one is. It's out even more. So these are normally set here with the additional oscillator 2 and 3 tuning dials. The problem is that if you do any kind of patching where you need to adjust this by any amount of semitones, you're going to be screwed if the oscillators themselves are out of tune, which we have here. So it's really important that we tune this and get all 3 oscillators dialed in. So I'm going to just set the tuning originally back to where it was, and we want these lined up as close to the lines as we can get. So next, we need to actually put something back behind here to flip the Behringer onto, and what I'm going to use are actually a couple of Blu-ray and DVD boxes. We're going to use Star Trek The Next Generation Blu-ray 1 through 4 seasons. And that's not quite tall enough, so why don't we just toss on some Tiesto, Another Day at the Office DVD. Then we need to make sure we've got our front panel set how it needs to be. I'm going to put a screenshot of page 15 of the Behringer D's manual. Be sure you set the front panel according to this before you do anything. Then what we want to do is power the synthesizer off. And this is obviously after we've left the unit on for about 30 minutes to let it warm up. And then we're going to try and flip this around and not hit any of our dials, hopefully. And we want to be careful because there are a few ribbon cables under here. And we don't want to touch anything either. Let me see if I can get this other shot. Might look a little better. So there we go. And we can see the ribbon cable here, and then another cable here for whatever that's for, probably power. And we're going to flip it over here. And I think we're good. I think we're good to go. We have a couple of pots here. We're going to need a mini screwdriver. This is the version 1 style of board. The newer ones are a little different, and the trim pots are going to use a mini flathead, something probably along the lines of this. So there's 2 different pots for each oscillator. They are marked here as Oscillator 1 range, Oscillator 1 scale, Oscillator 2 range, Oscillator 2 scale, Oscillator 3 range, and Oscillator 3 scale. So obviously, according to the instructions when we did this, Oscillator 1 is what we have powered on. That's these 2 here. For range, you want to get that up in an A5. For the scale, we want to tune that in at an A2 according to Behringer's instructions. So let's do this. Let's go over to Ableton and we can do this with a keyboard, but I think it's going to be a little easier if we just make a clip in here and then find an A5 right here. And let's just make that a long note. And then let's just duplicate this. And let's make another clip with an A2. We can actually just move this down. So then we can just trigger our A5 and it will be looping. So actually my screwdriver that I had is actually too big. So I am actually going to use a mini flathead here. This seemed to work okay. I actually did this already, but I'm going to do it again for you guys so you can see the process. So for the range, I'm going to turn the pot and you guys can see the tuner here. I've purposely detuned it for a second so I can redo this process. I'm going to trigger my A5 note. And you can see it's like a B right now. And then so we go to oscillator range and carefully find the slot here. And we're going to go down until we get a nice A note. Okay, so that's that part. Now we need to do the range, which will trigger an A2. And that's actually not too bad. So and this is for the scale. So that's dialed in. And let's check the A again. I think we're good. So the next step here is going to be to switch oscillators. I'm going to try and flip this back over. So I'm going to actually shut it off while I do this. And I'm going to flip it up. And I'm going to switch off oscillator 1. I'm going to switch on oscillator 2. Flip it back over. And turn it back on again. So next we're going to go up to oscillator 2. So we've got range and scale again. So we're going to do range first. Just the high note. See, it's actually a G. There we go. Let's make sure that was nice and steady. So then we'll go to A2. And we're going to do the scale. Which is actually pretty close already. And then we'll double check again. The A5. Now I'm going to shut it off again. We'll flip it over. We'll do the final oscillator, which I think oscillator 3 was the worst out of all of these. And I am just going to change something real quick. That is just a tiny bit off of that center. Okay. Okay. So oscillator 3, we're going to do range and then scale. So then we'll turn it back on. Trying to be careful here. And I'm going to give it a second for Ableton to catch back up. Okay, and then we'll do oscillator 3 range with the A5. go. And then we'll do the range or the scale. Okay, and then we'll check the range again. And this is why you do this back and forth a couple of times here. I don't know that I'm going to get that any better. That seems pretty steady now. Yes. I mean, that's probably close enough. All right, I'm going to call that good. So let's put it back together. Let's just test all three oscillators one more time. Again, first we want to power this off. Flip it over very carefully not to damage the wiring. And we definitely don't want to be touching the PCB or any of the electronics. Let's fire it back up again. Now we should have a nicely tuned Behringer D. So let's go back here. And I'm going to play a little bit on the Mini Moog. I can use the Mini Moog as a controller for this. I'm just checking the ranges here. All right, let's check the other oscillators. Let's go oscillator 1. Oscillator 2. Oscillator 3. Yep, so the oscillator 1 is off. So I'm just going to double check that I've got my tuning knob in the right spot. And we're going to do that one again because it needs to sound like this, like the other two oscillators. Up here. So it looks like we're probably sharp on that. That's my apologies. I didn't even notice that. So I'm going to shut it off again. And we're going to gently flip this back up and around. Let's power it back on. And again, we're going to do oscillator range first. Okay, that sounds good. Nice and stable. All right, and that's it. I'm going to shut it off again. And we'll test it one more time. We should be good to go. So yeah, I think we're in tune now. So this is something I wanted to demonstrate, is that even after tuning this, some people thought, oh, the Behringer D is out of tune and that's why it sounds different. Kind of. I mean, and I did manually tune each one of these to the Mini Moog during that video. I just want to point out that now that we've tuned this thing, there is a difference when you start stacking oscillators. This thing sounds a little bit different than an actual Mini Moog. And for an example, I've got 3 squares. Got the oscillator 3 is at 16 feet. Oscillator 2 is at 32 feet. And oscillator 1 is at 4 feet. And then this is all we're doing. I'm not going to touch any filters. This is the same preset, factory default settings or whatever that you need for the tuning process. And I've set this up on the Mini Moog. And I'm going to compare both of these, okay? So just so you guys can tell, this is no horseshit. This thing sounds a little bit different than the Mini Moog, even though it's in tune. And I tried to explain this to people on the video. There wasn't a lot of people that were complaining about that. I think people know. I mean, analog synth to analog synth, there's going to be a difference even of the same freaking make and model, okay? So even though this D here, this D might sound different than yours, okay? So that's just an FYI. But I just wanted to show you that this does still sound different even though now we've got this tuned up properly. So this is the Behringer D with the 3 squares. And here's the Mini Moog. Same settings. You hear what I'm talking about? This sounds, the Mini Moog Model D sounds much better, in my opinion, when you do stuff like this. Now, does that mean that the Behringer D sounds like shit? No, I think it sounds good. It's just not as good, okay? And that's my point. And so this thing is $300. The Mini Moog is 10 times that, easily. Maybe a little bit more for the reissue. So tune yours up, because from the factory, it's going to be probably out of tune. And know in your heart that you've got a pretty decent clone of a Mini Moog, but it's still not a Mini Moog, and well, I mean, you can hear the difference. So $300 though, come on, this is awesome. This is a fantastic synthesizer for $300, and this is something that I'll probably take on the road doing stuff with. So anyway, this is how you tune a Behringer D. All right, guys, thanks for watching. That's all I've got for you today. So again, thank you for your time. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.